ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, we are going to be talking about X-Manhunt. More specifically, we're going to be talking about X-Men number 13, as well as X-Factor number 8. All right, so let's go ahead and get through X-Men number 13. I feel like, yeah, this might be the way. This might be the way we tackle X-Men videos, yeah, because the way that the X office is doing right now, Tom Brevoort is out here trying to break everybody's pockets, and I just can't do it. I don't have the time or the bandwidth to be dropping 20 X videos a week with the way they're trying to go right now, having like 20 X books come out in a day. We just can't do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna continue this for the foreseeable future. And I'll just do a dump video where we'll just talk about all the X books that come out that day if I care to talk about them. So with X-Men number 13, that is the next installment of X-Manhunt. We've already seen Storm spread the cheeks of Jed MacKay's adjectiveless X-Men. And I'm going to right now, it doesn't really change here. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of pushback. There's a little bit of fight back. Juggernaut, while he definitely gets to get his lick back against Storm, it ain't gonna go the way that I think is, gonna make Storm seem any less powerful than what she is, because at the end of the day, Storm is now the host for the cosmic entity Eternity. So really, no one on the X-Men is able to put hands on Storm in any way that she can't deal with. And that's just a fact of life. It ain't gonna happen. What I will say that I found a little bit concerning here is that there is an element of the story that I feel, and I mean, I could be wrong and I'm open to being wrong, but I feel like an element that literally kind of feels like it just got pulled out of somebody's ass. So while Xavier is walking around breathing all of Beyonce's, good clean air, he is leaking something, whether he realizes it or not. He is leaking what is effectively a psychic brain bleed. He is causing other people in the area of San Francisco to suffer from this. And it's probably all very likely to do with him being an avian, having that brain tumor that was mentioned in the first issue of the X-Manhunt story arc with Uncanny X-Men. It probably has a lot to do with that, and also probably not helped by the fact that he has his Cerebro unit, which is increasing his power and reach. And he also gets what is effectively a power boost in this issue. I feel like it's been a long time coming and has always kind of been wishy-washy as to whether this was the case or not. But the long and short of it is that, yes, Charles Xavier has been causing suffering for people on a psychic level for an entire city. And it's something that doesn't really come up because, as we saw, NYX, none of this came up. This wasn't something that was being talked about. And we also saw that in the issue of Storm, it was never brought up. And one thing that is kind of hand waves this away is that it is casually mentioned that Storm is highly resistant to telepathic tampering, which is probably why she never even noticed that it was happening, because she's just so used to blocking out Charles Xavier. Part of me wonders if this brain bleed has anything to do with what was going on with the Greymalkin prison guards, because it was stated in Uncanny X-Men number 11 that some of the guards, at least 6, had called in sick. But the thing is, the way that was worded almost made it seem like this was something more of like a flu, like they were actually ill with something. Now, we did see later on in that issue that there was one particular guard who was having a psychotic episode in his own home and seeing his family as sentinels. So could this be part of the brain bleed? I don't know. It's difficult to say, and the way that Psylocke kind of addresses it, it doesn't seem like it's the same thing. Now, if it is, that's a whole other thing altogether, but I feel like it should be made a little bit more clear. If that is the case, I am more than willing to cop to that it is what it is. But if it's not, if this is not anything one to do with each other, yeah, then it feels like it came out of somebody's ass. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is like the one thing I was kind of like, no, I don't like this part. I don't like, I mean, it does help give Storm plausible deniability for why she was helping Charles, despite the fact that he was harming people in, what he was doing. But yeah, still, at the end of the day, I don't know. It's like one aspect of the story that it just felt, I don't even like using the word forced in situations all the time because it's so overused, but this is actually a situation where it felt forced. That's neither here nor there. Charles, as I said earlier, he's gotten a power boost. He has been up jumped to being an Omega level mutant. And it's kind of funny because Charles has often waxed and waned between being an Omega level mutant. There was times where he was hinted at as being an Omega level mutant. There have been times that people have rumored that he was an Omega level mutant. And then when they got around to the time of the Krakoan era, there were streamlining of what an Omega level mutant is, and Charles was not on the list. I'm starting to get a little concerned because I feel like Omega level is starting to get thrown around a lot now. Characters are just upping and becoming Omega level out of nowhere. Maggot was just up jumped to being an Omega level mutant in the most recent issue of Storm, which I'm fine with because I mean his power set is so weird and he's really the only type of person who has the power that he has. Very few other characters have powers even remotely similar to him, and I would actually dare say he's the only one with a power exactly like his own. In terms of like the telepath category, it's like, man, Tom Brevoort is breaking all the fucking rules, or I won't say breaking them, but bending the hell out of them, which yeah, I guess is fine. You know, it is what it is. They're his toys. He can do with them what he wants, I guess. But yeah, now, you know, I think Forge, he was leveled up to being an Omega level mutant at the start of X-Force. And then we saw in this issue that, yeah, Charles Xavier is officially an Omega level mutant. And we see this when Quentin Quire is the one. I think that's also the other. See, this is wrestling type of booking right here. You have Quentin Quire say, you have an Omega level mutant, call him an Omega level mutant. And I mean, it makes sense though. It's not like I feel like it's wrong that Charles is made an Omega level mutant. I mean, I think he should be and always should have been classified as such, despite the fact that during the Krakoan era, he was strictly dictated as being not an Omega level mutant. But it makes sense. The guy has about roughly the same psionic reach as Jean Grey. He can do a lot of the same things that Jean Grey can do psionically. Granted, he uses Cerebro to boost his power a lot of the time, but he has shown that he can do a lot of the things that he does even without Cerebro. You've seen him do all kinds of crazy stuff. So, I mean, it makes sense. And his powers have developed to the point where he now has telekinesis, something that he used to not have. So, yeah, I'll just say this. I'm here for it. I do appreciate that the fight between him and Xavier and Quentin Quire is handled the way it does. Xavier putting Kid Omega in the classroom and
demerits, raise your hand.
Trying to also explain how Omega level fights work. This is something I've said before. What Xavier's talking about is not news. I said this when Storm was going against Vulcan, that when you have two Omega level mutants, that's always going to be a fight that's going to come down to factors that have nothing to do with what kind of power they have, unless that Omega level mutant's power is something weird. When it comes down to Omega level mutants who have the exact same ability, that's where, yeah, it's going to come down to a stalemate. And at the end of the day, it's all going to be reliant on who has the experience, who has the better knowledge of how to wield their powers, who has the more tactical and strategic mind when it comes to how to use their powers. And Charles Xavier has all of that in spades. However, Quentin Quire is more skilled at something that Xavier isn't. That's dirty tricks. Just a few issues ago, he encountered, when entering the mind of one of the new mutant characters introduced in Jed MacKay's run, Ben Liu, a guy who had psionic abilities to project psionic illusions. Inside of Ben Liu's mind was a psionic trap, a trap that reintroduced Charles Xavier's wayward twin sister, Cassandra Nova, a character who has been MIA since the Krakoan era in the Steve Orlando Marauder series. That was one of the last times we saw Cassandra Nova, and she's been reintegrated into the From the Ashes era. However, it was not the actual Cassandra Nova though, it was a trap that she had laid, and Quentin Quire decided to keep it, and he is using it here. She's even doing the weird finger face thing that she's known for, especially now since the MCU and Deadpool and Wolverine. But something that she's been associated with for quite some time with doing. It's kind of one of her trademarks, and she ends up doing it here in this issue, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic to see. She is able to take down Charles Xavier enough so that they can put the Magneto helmet on Xavier and maybe help quell the brain bleed that he's letting off, psionically to the rest of San Francisco. It also kind of explains that vision Harvey X had shown where Xavier was wearing a Magneto helmet. It all makes sense now, that vision, because initially I thought it was Magneto just putting the helmet on. I was like, that seems weird, but I didn't look at the eyebrows really, the eyebrows gave away that it was Charles Xavier. So Charles Xavier, he's defeated. He doesn't really get to do anything to Beast. He doesn't really get to exert his will over him because Quentin Quire had already stepped in and stopped him. And ultimately, what it all comes down to is a conversation. Storm ends up getting control of herself back, taking back the wheel from Eternity, and having a conversation with Psylocke, who is being very Psylocke, but also kind of not at the same time. This is a Psylocke who has grown a lot. You know, she doesn't really want to fight Storm, but she basically lets you know, they basically set it up to where Storm and Psylocke will probably have a little play date here before too long, which I would be interested to see. But yeah, everything gets kind of put back in status quo because everybody's got to go back to their respective books and go into their respective things after X-Manhunt is over. Each one of these story arcs is only going to encompass a single issue of anything. So yeah, these characters got to be ready to go back to their story arcs as they were. Cyclops, who got his face frozen completely by Storm, he is completely back to normal now. He is fine. There's really no long-term or ill effects of getting his face frozen the way that it was, which is insane. That's insane. By the time you get to the end of this book, this is when X Factor steps in, because X Factor is the next issue that's going to encompass all of this, and that's going to be X Factor number 8. And we get to see the team, which for those who have not been keeping up, X Factor is kind of in dire straits right now because, well, for one, the book is getting canceled, but from an in-universe perspective, characters like Havoc and Frenzy have been fired from the team. Frenzy quit. You know, she quit before she could get fired. Just like, I'm out of here. But no, we see in this issue, Havoc and Frenzy are getting involved in the proceedings. But the team that is facing off against the X-Men, the adjectiveless X-Men, they aren't prepared for this. At least not all of them. And I say that because, and this is largely a book that hangs its hat on heavy comedy and even some dark, humor. But Beast in this issue gets to be the one that delivers it, because one of the things that's pointed out is that none of these characters on X Factor are any match for the adjectiveless X-Men. And that's not even being mean. It's true. Granny Smite's only power is that she's an octogenarian who cannot die. She doesn't have superhuman strength. She doesn't have laser eyes or the ability to manipulate minds. Outside of the fact that she cannot die, she's a regular 80-something-year-old woman. What is she gonna do to any of these characters? And then you have Zyber, whose only power is creating EMPs. No one on the team has anything electronic related to them. Even Beast makes a joke. The worst you could do is destroy my phone, like erase all the pictures I have on my phone. So that's the worst you can do. And then you also gotta look at characters like Dr. Cecilia Reyes, who I think is actually more of a match for some of these characters, but her power, which is to generate force fields, it's largely defensive. It's a defensive power. It's not a power that, well, yes, she has used it to attack people in the past. She's not going to be able to run fades on Cyclops and Magic and Beast and Juggernaut and Psylocke and Kid Omega and Temper. No, it's not going to happen, baby. You also look at a character like Pyro. While Pyro could maybe hold a candle to some of them, Temper immediately nullifies his one power. He can control fire, but she can control fire and ice. And then there's Forget-Me-Not, who... What was I talking about again? Anyway, you have Angel. Angel is, he's got angel wings. I mean, technically he has the alternate form of Archangel, but even that, he's still no match for the adjectiveless X-Men. And while this is something I thought was a writing inconsistency in regards to the X Factor team, the fact Angel has a healing factor. He should not have been laid up in the hospital for so many issues. Well, as it turns out, Beast makes a joke about that in this issue. And it's even pointed out there was a reason why Angel was in the hospital for as long as he was. And it's because he got some upgrades. He now has talons on his fingers and toes when he turns into Archangel. He also has like a glowing sword, and his wings, well, they've always been able to kind of reconfigure and do different things. This time, I mean, he's got a little bit of an upgrade to even that. But even that, he's still no match. And honestly, that's for good reason. While yes, the X Factor team and X-Men team, they got to fight each other because they literally advertised it on the front of the cover. The truth is, it's not really what this whole thing's about. It's really less about the core X Factor team versus the X-Men and more about Havoc versus Cyclops. But this is done in such a way that I think is actually pretty handy, because you're taking these characters who, under normal circumstances, their powers cannot hurt each other. Havoc's power does not affect Cyclops. Cyclops' power does not affect Havoc. So what I love about this, Russell is able to actually manipulate Cyclops' power from a narrative perspective in ways that actually do affect Havoc, while not directly touching him, but manipulating the world around him. And I like how, that was, kind of subverted expectation. And ultimately, the whole point of this issue is that in the midst of the fray, while the X-Men and X-Factor are fighting each other, Havoc and Frenzy jump into the middle of it while no one's looking and run off with Charles Xavier. This is what leads to that fight between Havoc and Cyclops. The real meat of this here is that Xavier wanted something, and it was to a remnant of the Krakoan era. Seems like that's something that's coming up a lot here in this story arc. The last seed of Krakoa. Oh, now we have the last Krakoan egg. And this is an egg that is not empty. It is an egg that has somebody in it. And we don't know who it is. It's never stated. It's never put out there. But whatever it is, we probably won't find out until at the very least, or I would say very earliest, X-Force. And we might not even find out till the end of X-Men, X-Manhunt Omega. That is probably more likely where this is all going to come down. But as far as the mysterious assailant who kidnaps Xavier at the end of this issue, I'm not going to lie, I don't really know who this character is, if they're even supposed to be anybody, or if they are important on any level. I mean, they seem like a regular person to me by all accounts. That's just what I'm going to go with. I'm sure we'll probably learn if they are somebody of import. We'll figure out who they are in the next issue of X-Force. But until that happens, well, it is what it is. But whoever it is, they take Charles, they take the last Krakoan egg, and that's pretty much the last that we see. So X-Force number 9 is where we're going to pick all of this back up. I thought that ultimately, while this issue not as consequential as probably it wanted to be, it at least tried. I think it at least tried. I think it was a bit more like, honestly, I feel like maybe my prediction on this, and I kind of cut it from the last video because I felt like I was being mean when I said it. But in the previous video, I basically said that I have a sneaking suspicion the titles like NYX, X-Force, X-Factor are probably not going to be as consequential to X-Manhunt as people might want to believe they are. And I think I was right. I cut it because I was trying not to be mean, but now I'm starting to feel like maybe I should have left that shit in there. I don't know. The next issue is X-Force, and I'm going to go and call right now. I'm thinking that issue not going to be terribly consequential. Maybe it will, because I feel like it'd be really bad to have two issues that aren't exactly, bringing, the story home, especially with how close it is already to being over. I don't think that's a smart move, but I hope that X-Force is consequential. But I will just be honest with you. I haven't really been jiving with that book very much in the last few issues, last 2 or 3 issues, I think. But yeah, X-Manhunt, I'll be honest with you. X-Men number 13, I think is probably the only one of the two that's just really the book you need to read to know what's going on. But I will say, I do think X-Factor is a solid title. And I'm actually sad that of the 3 X titles that are being canceled, I'm sad that X-Factor is one of them, because I legitimately like the book. I mean, was it like must read X-Men stuff? No. Not in terms of like the overall narrative, but it definitely felt like a book that had something to say. Definitely felt like a book that was trying to offer up something different. And not to say other books don't do that, but I feel like X-Factor did it in a way that it wasn't just a typical X-Factor book. If you enjoyed this video, y'all know what to do. Hit all those buttons. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Tap the notification bell so that way you don't miss out on my videos. And yeah, do all the things. Share the video, all that good stuff. And there's a video up on the screen probably. It's probably over here somewhere right now. Go check it out. It's about something. Maybe.